I set all this stuff up already. I went through and I worked on it and I set everything up and tested it out, and I was ready 30 minutes before I went to shoot live. And then as soon as I go to shoot live, all of a sudden nothing's working correctly. Now all of a sudden my glasses are picking up the screening out on my glasses. So anyways, I guess I got to lose the glasses too. It's not one thing, it's another right now, I tell you what. So today, what I have for you guys is an officer-involved shooting out in the public lands where an innocent woman got shot. That's the overall gist of it. And I have some of my own personal views on this, and I was originally told about this story about 3 weeks ago. I was asked my opinion on it, and I basically did a little bit more research. Instead of just going full on ahead and saying what I already knew or doing a video about what I already knew, I decided to wait and let the story unfold more. I have put out a couple of feelers out there to try and get in touch with the lady that was shot by the BLM officer. But what I want to do is I want to go over the news aspect of this because it really seems to me like some news organizations, as we well know, are not really doing their job, and they don't really care to in some instances, so much so to where some of the other places that are doing the job properly sometimes seem to be the ones that have a bit of an agenda. So that's what I wanted to go over right there. I'm going to show you the news stories where the lady has been shot at, what the BLM said, and we're going to go over all of that right about now. So let me open up some of the news windows for you guys. The original articles were really shoddy. There really wasn't much in them. The Free Thought Project is one of the articles that did the most research on it. The local articles pretty much just said there was an officer-involved shooting, and that the reason there was an officer-involved shooting was that the officers were chasing illegal ATVers, and that the rangers in that area, for that forest area, had contacted the BLM so that the BLM could help them deal with it. So here's what the Free Thought Project report states. BLM agents open fire on innocent couple, shoots woman because ATV drove near restricted area. That's the excuse, because that's a total excuse. It makes no sense whatsoever. Pedro and Denise Mejia feel lucky to be alive after they were nearly murdered when their all-terrain vehicle broke down, and they say they were confronted by federal officers from the Bureau of Land Management who opened fire on them with no warning. The couple was exploring the deserts of Joshua Tree National Park when their ATV got a flat tire. They said they did that because they did not have a spare. They were traveling much slower than they would have if they had 4 properly inflated tires. At around 11 p.m. on June 10th, they came face to face with the federal agents, whom the Mejias, I could be pronouncing that completely wrong, said immediately opened fire on them. In the hail of bullets, Denise was struck in the head and hand before BLM agents ceased fire. Predictably, police are telling a different story. Incredulously, a detective with the department who is investigating the officer-involved shooting actually blames the nearly murdered victims for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. RSO investigator Armando Munez reportedly told KMIR News, his quote is, Munez says armed officers patrol the federal lands, and it's important before you go off-roading to know what you're doing, where you go out and use those vehicles to make sure that you are driving them in a place where it's allowed. Sometimes people go out and assume it's okay, so we just encourage you to do some homework. Which, that's just insane. Let me read that again. Munez says armed officers patrol the federal lands, and it is important before you go off-roading to know where you're going before you go out and use those vehicles to make sure that you are driving them in a place where it's allowed. Sometimes people go out and assume that it's okay, so we just encourage you to do some homework. Oh, man. Not only were 2 citizens nearly killed by the BLM agents, but no one has been arrested for the unprovoked attack on the couple to date. Equally disturbing is the contention of the Mejillas are maintaining that they did absolutely nothing wrong which would have provoked the attack. In their own words, the Mejillas describe what happened from their perspective. Denise Mejia said, "The first thing my husband did was say, 'We're stopping, and I immediately put my hands up too. And right after I raised my hand in the air when he fired the shot." Denise, who was a nurse, suffered a gunshot wound to her head and her hand. Her husband, Pedro, said blood was everywhere. "What I remember the most was the blood she had everywhere," he said. "I remember my wife just screaming, 'I don't want to die, I don't want to die.'" All we had was an ice chest cooler, no alcohol. We had a metal detector. We had a gun in the vehicle. It's for coyotes, but it was tucked away, said Pedro Mejia, who is now demanding answers. "It's really an emotional roller coaster. We are happy to be alive and can say that we are still with our family, but at the same time, we are confused about why everything happened," the Mejillas said. The couples claim the BLM officers swooped in and immediately opened fire on them without warning. They said they did not see any officers prior to the shooting and were in no way threatening the federal agents. What's more, further illustrating the fact that they were entirely innocent, the couple who was nearly murdered were not charged with any crime. And that's a huge deal. That's such a huge deal. I guarantee you, from somebody who's had my fair share of police contact, if they're going to pull their gun on you and they have the opportunity to lock you up, typically a guy with a badge is going to. If he feels he needs to pull his firearm on you, he has any reason to at all, they're typically going to lock you up, let alone if they actually fire on you. But that's just from my personal experience. And I shouldn't even have said that until I'm done reading this article. So let me finish reading this article real quick. Whether or not the married couple was in a restricted area or not, no police officer should be able to open fire on any citizen and get away with it. The attempted murder of the nurse needs to be treated as such and appropriate charges filed against the trigger-happy federal agent. If she had been killed, the story would have been written in an entirely different way, we are sure. Just as in almost all the officer-involved cases documented by the Free Thought Project, the officer in question has been placed on administrative leave instead of in handcuffs and in jail where he belongs. If a citizen would have opened fire on the BLM officer, his fellow badge-wearing buddies would have swooped in and killed the man in seconds, but because he has a badge, he is conveniently afforded qualified immunity. The attempted murder case involving the Mejillas is eerily similar to the officer-involved murder of a Michigan teenager who was riding an ATV. Former State Trooper Mark Bessner tased 15-year-old Damian Grimes while the boy was riding his ATV on the city streets. Several officers attempted to shift the blame for the teen's death away. That has nothing to do with this. I'd rather not even get into this at that moment, but it is part of this article. Denise Mejia underwent surgery on her hand and had 15 staples placed in her head following the shooting. If what she and her husband are saying is true, there is no amount of blaming the victims that can be done to distract the public from the fact that the BLM who opened fire on them should be charged with attempted murder. Now that statement I completely agree with. Now that that's the end of the article, this article in and of itself went into so much more depth and actually talked to the 2 people who are the victims here. I mean, these people are obviously the victims. If you've ever had any sort of police contact, you probably understand that if an officer is going to fire on you, they are absolutely going to lock you up for anything they possibly can. These 2 people are obviously, seem to be, from this article, the atypical type of person that I meet when I'm out in the deserts and when I'm out in public lands and when I'm out in the areas like they are. They were in an ATV, which is, 70% of the people that go out there probably have ATVs, or at least the areas I've been to, they're ATV heavy because a lot of them you can't really get around without something like that. They had a weapon on them that is merely for protection or hunting, and it was stowed away. They're out there using public lands, and the way that it's written in a couple of other articles pretty much puts it that, so the original articles that came out said that the reason that she was shot at was because there was a investigation into illegal off-roading. That was what the statement was. Investigation into illegal off-roading. Let me see. Here's this one. The most recent incident resulted in some off-roaders in California simply strayed outside the designated boundaries on the BLM managed area. Now, this says they were absolutely out of the boundaries. It is alarming not just because there are no clear crime, but because the BLM agent resorted so quickly to deadly force against an unarmed citizen who posed no threat to him. And this is the big deal. This says KMIR reports. An officer with the BLM or Bureau of Land Management officer shot a woman who was off-roading on Birdo Canyon off of Dillon Road, Riverside County, which, by the way, is where the fire agate mine is that I go to every season. That's Riverside County. Investigators responded Sunday at 11 p.m. and were in the remote canyon most of the day Monday. The preliminary investigation revealed at this time that the Bureau of Land Management officers responded to assist the Joshua Tree National Park Service Ranger with an illegal off-roading failure to yield investigation. Like, oof, like, I mean, head blown off of the top of your shoulders. This is insane. I can't even believe the type of hubris somebody has to think that you can fire a weapon at somebody for driving in an unapproved area. I mean, I can't even understand it. Now, I mean, if they were like driving through an endangered species nest, if they were like jumping sand dunes and trying to land on turtles' nests and just, I mean, I might be able to get that sort of use of deadly force. Like, all right, the dude's not going to stop. Try and take a tire out. Don't hit him in the head if you can afford it. I mean, some crazy ass scenario, but this is nuts. It's truly nuts. It's so crazy. I mean, it's like Mad Max out there in the wilds. And these, I'm yelling, and these are the people that are supposed to be out there for land management and protection. There's a group I had pulled up here a minute ago, American Mining Rights Association. And they're one of the people that I saw some of this on, and in what they wrote about this whole thing, they made this statement of, should these federal officers even have the right to have firearms out there? And I'm not sure if it was their statement or somebody else's, although it's a very valid statement. I've spent so much time out in the bush, the wilds, the desert, so much time in BLM land area, which tends to be more desert than forest and stuff like that. There's like the BLM, there's like the Forestry Service, right? I honestly believe that anybody that should be allowed to have a firearm or a weapon in those areas should absolutely be carrying one if they can, if they would like to. Not for confrontation with humans necessarily. For personal protection from elements, for personal protection from crazies. And this does happen every now and then out in public land areas where you don't run into nice, cool, respectable, responsible, self-reliant people. Most of the people I run into out there tend to be older than me and much better at dealing with the elements and relying on themselves out in those areas than even I am myself. That's the majority of the people out there. At the same time, there are instances out in these rural, very detached from society, very small town, 60, 70 miles away, where you sometimes get people that are out there to do nefarious things. You sometimes get people that are out there to do horrible things for no other reason than to do horrible things. Now, for this reason, I absolutely think, yes, BLM officers should be allowed to carry weapons out in the wild out there. But I also think you should be allowed to have your weapon out in the wild out there. Yet, at the same time, this is just another view of the giant issue that we have going on in this country with law enforcement at this time. And it's been going on for a long time, but with the advent of the smartphone, with the amazing pixels that you can get in picture quality and video quality now, it has put a microscope on the actions of the people that are supposed to be policing our society. We're finding out that it's not so much that they're just, doing their jobs, but that they're overdoing their jobs, that they're overstepping their bounds, which is what American Mining Rights Association is actually about. They deal with this sort of stuff on a regular basis. And I'm going to have another story coming up soon that is specifically about that. I think that if you are any person, whether you have a badge or not, and you fire your weapon at another person that had no ill intent on you, you should absolutely be held physically responsible, civilly responsible, and lawfully responsible. I think that everything is on that decision right there. And I am a hothead. I have my moments where I absolutely lose my temper. I think if you're one of those people, maybe you shouldn't be a police officer. But from what I've seen, there are a lot of police officers that are way too much into being a hothead and not interested enough in trying to de-escalate a situation. Not near enough interested in trying to de-escalate a situation. On that note, real quick, I'm going to go and check out what you guys are saying on the stream. Elk Slayer says that officers are only supposed to shoot as a last resort, which is 100% a true fact. I completely agree with that one. T-Name, the Naked Aggregate Mining and Exploration, says that's what happens when you replace, I believe he means faux instead of faux officers with ex-military. They are just thugs and gangsters. I actually have something to say about that one right there. Let me change your guys' view real quick and make sure you guys are still hearing everything. All right, that's what this is, making sure that you guys are still hearing me. All right. I actually don't agree with that. I actually think that although we have a lot of people that come back from the military that have PTSD and definitely shouldn't be officers, I've seen officers that are military trained. I'm looking at the wrong place. I should be looking at you right here. I've seen officers that are military trained dealing with civilians in high tension areas, and they react completely differently than officers who haven't been in some of those scenarios. Now, I haven't seen so many that I can make a clinical analysis on it, but I'm not against ex-military being police officers, but I'm definitely, society needs to decide who is doing what for who. Is it the people that are working for the government because the government has been sold out to corporations, or is it the government is working for the people, and because it's working for the people, then we need to retrain our police to work for the people too, to stop escalating scenarios, to stop creating scenarios that don't already exist, to stop racially profiling. Stopping counties that tend to be what they call mosquito counties that have just a little bit of the county that touches a highway, and yet they get 30% of their revenue from pulling over ridiculous amounts of drivers and writing even faulty tickets. This sort of stuff is going on a regular basis right now. The over-bureaucraticness of the United States at the moment is getting a lot of flack and issue, and the problem is both sides are muddying the water, so I'm not ever comfortable picking a side. I want to pick an issue, to tell you the truth. So on that note, all of the information that's come out is pretty much in the Free Thought Project's comments. I have picked up a couple of other things on Facebook, and I have put some feelers out trying to interview the couple that got accosted by the BLM officers, because that's what I believe. I believe they got accosted by the BLM officers. I have another article from somebody who is more in tune than me that can go over some of this. Let me go to that screen real quick. On this article, I'm going to skip the little over a week ago because we've already done that. This says the riders were stopping and putting their hands in the air when they were fired on by the BLM ranger. In this incident, if this incident hadn't occurred after years of abuse of power by the BLM law enforcement agents who use their heavy-handed tactics as the first and most preferred method of confronting citizens, then perhaps we could excuse this agent's decision to use lethal force as an extenuating circumstance which demands further scrutiny. That's a messed up sentence. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a law enforcement agency that deploys SWAT teams to wrangle cows, an agency staffed by agents who maintain secret kill lists of American citizens, and an agency that offers no recourse for a terrorized public to seek power, to check power when it is abused. For this reason, we need to get rid of the law enforcement agencies maintained by the BLM, the USFS, and empower local sheriffs to enforce laws in jurisdictions with abundant public land. Now that, I actually like that idea. That's an idea I like way more, because when you're out in these places and you talk to the sheriffs that are in the areas and live in the towns, and that gives jobs back to the local people in the small towns instead of bringing them out from other agencies, which the federals tend to do a lot of times. Senator Lee is spearheading efforts in Congress to abolish increasingly militaristic and trigger-happy federal law enforcement offices. The Bureau of Land Management, BLM Office of Law Enforcement Services, OLES, is particularly odious, and many believe has blood on its hands. From the tragic and absurd waste of life and resources, Operation Cerberus Action, I don't know what that is, maybe I'm going to have to look into that, in Utah, to the Bundy Ranch raid, to shooting last week of an unarmed couple off-roading in California, BLM law enforcement is beginning to look like a frightening combination of Stasis and Keystone Cops. They're not merely hyperbole because of the federal OLES agents enjoying the protections of civil service status, not to mention large insular bureaucracies to shield them from accountability. There is a seething culture with these organizations of corruption and lawlessness. Utah, Nevada, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, and now California have all been bedeviled by the over-the-top BLM bullying tactics and overreach. Senator Lee is one of the few sitting members of Congress paying attention to the activities of these dangerous federal law enforcement agencies, and is the only one addressing the issue with boundaries and honesty. Last month, he called for the abolishment of federal police squads, and yesterday he issued the following press release in response to the outrageous attack of an unarmed off-roader by BLM agencies in the Southern California desert. Which that was the top, the thing that they're talking about is this section right here, where I skipped the top paragraph except for the bottom line and then read this. This would be his police report, or his press release that he issued, and this link up here is the original. So, no trespassing violators will be shot. So this is the, that is the press release that senator put out. Let me go over here again. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that black screen thing on my glasses. So, I've had interactions with BLM officers, and my interactions with BLM officers personally have always been fine. They've always been quick. I've never had any issues. At the same time, I'm not the kind of person that goes out looking to make friends with people with badges. I mean, we don't need no stinking badges. Like how, the way I feel about it, being a kid that literally grew up in the ghettos and the hoods of the West Coast, police only want to take somebody to jail. That's the way I view things. And I've been rolled by a police officer where I've had really bad experiences with police officers. In their defense, in my younger years, I was doing a lot of stuff I shouldn't have been doing. That is neither here nor there in this scenario. A lot of my personal feelings are basically about the way that the BLM is acting when they're out on public lands. And I have experience of this from right after I got the Opal Hill fire agate mine. I gave permission to somebody to go out to the Opal Hill fire agate mine and get some video and do some digging. And the person I sold it to, Chris Rose, did also. Now, we sent some people out there, and while they were out there, a BLM officer decided to show up out there. He ends up not just being a BLM officer, he ends up being one of their special service higher up officers. Now, the story that we get from the people we had on the claim, these officers came up in there, scared them, basically verbally forced them to give up their IDs and asked them if they could search their vehicles. Now, this is on public land. Now, it's on a mining claim on public land, and the BLM officers immediately started saying, you guys are, according to the people that we know, the people that have contacted us, especially after this contact, the BLM officers were going up there and were saying that the selling of mining claims was illegal, that this claim was still owned by Nancy, Nancy Hill, which it wasn't, and a bunch of other things. And it was all scare tactics and misinformation. Now, after my friend contacted me about this, I tried contacting the BLM, and I tried specifically contacting this officer, and it took me 2 weeks to get this guy on the phone. And I mean, I harassed the BLM office. I harassed the BLM office so much, they end up telling me, just so you don't know, we don't give out our BLM officers' phone numbers. We don't give their phone numbers out. And the thing that really aggravated me is I found the guy's home address. I couldn't find a number to call him, to interview him, but I could find his home address. Like, if you're going to scrub information, get rid of the home address. Just saying. So when I finally got this officer on the phone, which he asked me never to use his name if I ended up publicizing this, and I ended up not publicizing this originally when it first happened. But when I spoke to him for the next 45 minutes to an hour at least that day, and I had a list of questions I had for him that I had gotten from the people that he had spoken to, he pretty much refused to answer anything with an affirmative. He gave a lot of wishy-washy political answers of that might be, oh, I found out that that's not something that we even handle anymore. Saying that selling mining claims is illegal. It's not true. Harassing people about maybe arresting them for taking the rocks they were taking off of that claim. That's not their jurisdiction to do that, because in that area you're allowed to rock hound. So unless they were taking an amount that actually is over what the federal amount is, or unless those officers could prove they were actually selling rocks that they were taking off of public land for a profit, it's not his jurisdiction. He has no business doing any of the things that he was up there doing that day. But while he was up there doing that day, he made everybody up there feel scared. He scared every single one of them. It was an intimidation tactic, and there's no reason that this should be going on our public lands. The one good piece of information I got from this officer when I spoke to him was that he has no right to ask you for your ID. He has no right to ask you what you're doing there. He has no right to even ask you any questions unless you are actually doing something you're not supposed to be doing federally against BLM law. He has no right to speak to you unless you would like to speak to him. So, like any other time you talk to the police, if you haven't watched every other YouTube video that is about police on YouTube, I'm only saying that because this is going to be on YouTube, I recommend that you stick to your rights. Because in my mind, somebody with a badge just wants to take somebody to jail to feed this bullshit monetary system that is being fed human beings in order to pour out dollars for rich people. It is Jim Crow nowadays. It is absolute slavery. I know. I've been that guy working for $1 a day, and I've been that guy in a horrible prison hoping to God I would even get that $1 a day because I wasn't trying to take money from other people that were on the street. So, probably too much information there. The system is messed up. All of our policing structures inside of the United States need to be redefined. And they need to actually go after real criminals instead of making people that are not real criminals out to be real criminals. Because that's what's going on in our society in general, to where a husband and wife on an ATV with a gold detector can't be out in public land and make a mistake, which isn't even worth a ticket, apparently. The whole thing's crazy. So that's what I have to say on it. That's all of my information on it. And I'm going to go back and check out your guys' chat to see what's going on with that, because I'm the cat in the hat. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Modern Prospector says he never had any of those problems with police departments around here. It's a media-created issue that there is radical profiling issues. The BLM don't act like a regular department. They're bureaucratic. I'm actually glad you brought that up, Modern Prospector. That's not true. And the reason that's not true is because you actually probably don't understand what's going on in that area. And the only reason I do is because I have people that work inside the Forestry Service. And my person that works inside the Forestry Service, he's very, very well connected with what's going on in this country. I don't need to tell you any more about him. What I can tell you is how I almost forgot to include this in this video. He explained to me how the BLM officers work, how the Forestry Service officers work, and that basically they are trained as police officers, and then their barracks or their home base or their offices are not even in the same place as the regular Forestry Service. So the BLM officers, when I talked to, and I found this out from the head of the BLM in the area where the mining claim I like to go to the most is, dang it, it's doing it on the glasses again. He has even told me that he's the head geologist of that area for the BLM. He tells the BLM officers what they should be doing in order to arrest people and stuff like that. He's the guy that when I first talked to you saying, is your BLM officer going out and doing this? And he's like, he wouldn't be doing that because that's not what he's supposed to do. And then when I get the BLM officer on the phone, he's like, oh, but don't know what you're talking about. The BLM and the BLM officers, they're actually not really the same. These guys are just police officers that have a BLM stamp on them, whose office and mandate is contradicted. Well, their office is separate from the geologist and the regular people that actually do things like scientific research with the BLM and stuff like that and make decisions about mining claims and stuff. That office is completely separate from the officer's office. They're not the same at all. These guys and their sergeant, they act like police officers and they police the area. And these guys make decisions on ecology and then tell those guys if they should be arresting people for stuff. So they're actually completely separate. I didn't understand this until my friend who works for the Forestry Service was explaining all of this to me and how deep he is in it. And he's like, but when you talk to the Forestry Service officers compared to the people that are working in the Forestry Service, they're completely separate. They act completely separate, which makes sense. A lot of times, from what he was explaining to me, their officers in the Forestry Service don't know some of the laws inside the Forestry Service. They have to be told it by other people. And that would make sense from what the experience that I've had with the BLM, because that guy was a higher up in the BLM as an officer. He was much more than just an officer. And he still was doing all kinds of things he had no right to, acting like he didn't know. So on that one. On a prospector, he says, I was a police officer for nearly 5 years and never encountered or heard any issues where people were profiled based on color of their skin. That is all awesome and has nothing to do with this conversation. People are absolutely profiled. If you don't think they're profiled, maybe you didn't live in that area. Everything it's all about situational things. I mean, if you live in the neighborhood I live in right now, there's not a lot of profiling going on. At the same time, if you live where I lived in Portland, Oregon even, there was definitely profiling going on, absolutely. And it wasn't necessarily the color of your skin. It could absolutely be the way you look, the type of car you drive, the age of it. But there's always that sort of stuff going on. Gut instinct. When a police officer has a gut instinct to check somebody out, he's profiling. That's exactly what that is. I don't really care, but it's not about this scenario. People that were shot, it wasn't racially motivated. It's almost like these people were target practice. It's really crazy, the story that's coming out. And I really wish I could get the couple that was actually fired upon. I wish I could get them on here live. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have them here live to have a conversation about this. Just going through people's comments, scrolling to the bottom, seeing if there's anything else I should approach. Modern Prospector says that's what the BLM often does because they don't know the law and, well, they think they own our public lands, especially the land they and their families vacation on. That's what the BLM often does. That's a fair opinion. That's the opinion I've actually heard from a lot of mine owners. During my travels, I had a lot more. I heard about the BLM a lot more than I actually interacted with any BLM officers. My first couple trips around the country, the only time I even saw stupid microphone. The only time I even saw BLM officers my first time around the country was when I was recording at the Royal Peacock Opal Mine, and Harry Bill died. And Harry Bill died the night that I pulled in. Right after I got set up, I found out that's what was going on. It might have been, no, it was the first day I was there. Harry Bill died the first day I was there. It was just after the night I pulled in. But that was the first time I actually saw BLM officers. And I didn't actually have any interaction with them. You know, they just looked like a normal guy in a Ranger truck. And the 3 or 4 times I have actually had interaction with BLM officers, it has not been anything like what we're seeing here. And the time I had interaction with the BLM geologist up at the mine, it was a completely great, personable interaction at that point in time. Now, the next time, things weren't exactly the same. They weren't how they seemed to be when we were in person. But everything depends. You know, the thing is that the badge should not protect anybody because they're human. So if you're a crazy human that got a badge and you're out there sadistically trying to hurt people, there should be no protection for you. Like, there should be none. The pitchforks and the fire and all that, they should come for you because you're a monster. If you're one of those people, you're a monster. There's nothing worse in this world than a cop with a chip on their shoulder that just likes to take people to jail because that person ruins people's lives every day on a whim. And I've seen that shit before. I've seen it. Oh, I wasn't supposed to cuss. I was trying not to cuss. Let me see. But there's not all the cops are like that. You know, there are people. America Died 1913 says, I always respect good policemen. I always respect bad policemen even more. That's a great point. In general, if I'm talking to a police officer, I go from, you know, all the cuss words to yes, sir, no, sir, and just trying to get out of there as soon as possible. I don't like to talk to police officers. I told you about my mentality of them. I think they're just there to take somebody to jail. Being that I think they're just there to take somebody to jail, I don't give them anything on a fishing expedition. I absolutely know what my rights are. I stick to my rights. If they don't have anything to talk about that has to do with their job, then they can move on to go do their job somewhere else. If they'd like to speak to me, they can come see me at the bar when they're not wearing a badge, and then we can talk. Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. Probably not, but still, we can attempt it. That was really funny from America Died, though. Yeah, if you're in a scenario where you're talking with a police officer and you're just trying to exert your rights and you're just trying to move on and you're not being rude about it, because that's one of the things, you have to not be an asshole. If you come out the gate being an asshole, most of these guys, that's the first thing they're going to do is want to fight. And you can't win, especially if you're in BLM land. Like, you're not going to win. So the best thing you can do is de-escalate. If they can't, we have to. We absolutely have to. We have to pull our phones out. We have to pull our cameras out. We have to have everything documented at all times. Like, if you have internet connection, even if it's slow, go live. I encourage you right now that if you're one of the people that is like me and spends a lot of time out in the deserts, just because of this stuff is going on, be prepared. Because that's what you're probably doing anyways. If you're like the people that I know that go out to the desert and go out and hunt for rocks and have ATVs and RVs and you're over 50, then you have the ability to be prepared. So I deal with everybody as if they're a possible threat until my gut and everything else thinks that they're not. So if I think you're a possible threat, one of the first things I do is I put a camera on you. Because I've found out that the biggest asshole gets a camera up in his face, he might be like, oh, you know what? I don't want to act like such an asshole anymore, because I do that too. So de-escalate, and like America Died said, Respect a good policeman, but if you got a bad policeman on your hands, really respect that dude, okay? It's all about getting out of there with yourself intact. Modern prospector. I didn't even read this. I'm just going to read. My best friend that I grew up with started out as a BLM officer. Couldn't stand the bureaucracy of higher ups dictating what they could and couldn't do regardless of the law. He left after 6 months. Now, this is what I'm dealing with inside of the BLM right now, with the claim that we're on. I'm not absolutely convinced that some of the stuff that I'm being told is absolutely factual. I almost think that some of my ignorance is being played against me. Now, because of that, I'm not picking a side. I'm staying out of it, and I'm letting the BLM and the mine owner deal with that scenario. I get to go out and do whatever I want anyways, as long as I'm not, selling mining trips and bringing a whole bunch of people out until they get their issues completely worked out. But one of the stories I'm going to bring you soon, and we're going to talk about really soon, is going to have some more to do with the AMRA and also my mining claim out at, or not, the claim I like to go and visit for Fire Egg, because I don't own it anymore. I only owned it for a little while before I sold out to a bigger guy. But that'll be something we'll be talking about soon. I am not okay with people in government making up rules because they want to. Not okay with that. I'm not okay with drastic amounts of pollution in any way or shape or form. I'm not okay with the coal ash shift that they just made. That's insanely stupid and trying to poison humans. At the same time, I am all for small mining operations. I am all for non-chemical use, non-polluting, habitat reforming types of mining, small mining operations. I'm absolutely all for that, but how could I not be, and I'm not for people that don't have any skin in the game, people that don't go to those areas, people that don't actually know anything about it, being the ones that make the decisions for the people that do. I'm not all for that either. Recap the shooting. Sorry I got here late. Can't find any info. Said America died. Give me a second. America died. I will. All right. Am I at the bottom of it? I think I am. I'm at the bottom of the screen. Okay, cool. So just to recap for America Died real quick before I go ahead and end this transmission. A woman was shot by BLM officers. I did not put links in the description, but I will put links in the description within the first hour of me getting done with this video. I will go and copy all the links that I have, and I will put them in the description. So if you check the video and you click the little arrow to see where the description is, you can find all of the links to all of this stuff. In general, a husband and wife were out enjoying public land. They were on an ATV, and supposedly they went off-road. They went off-road in an area you're not supposed to, like it's restricted area or something. Because of that, BLM officers saying that they could not catch up with them basically shot at them from behind. The couple says they had a flat tire and they weren't going very fast because the tire was flat. There was no need for them to be shot at, and they shot a woman in the head and in the hand. She had 17 staples in her head. Her hand was in a cast in the picture. They didn't charge them with anything, and that's sort of an issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if you're ever going to use deadly force and you don't even have the right to write somebody a frickin' speeding ticket, I mean, obviously we have a psycho on the force. We have a psycho on the force. So that's a recap of what this story is and what this story is about. And I'm trying to work the kinks out, but it seems like every time I go to do a live stream with this software, something that was working before is not working right now. So it was set up exactly like it was set up the night before doing a video gaming set, and it didn't work. My son wants to do more video gaming. I was telling him maybe we'd live stream it on Facebook or Twitch or something. He likes YouTube because he knows people watch it. So feel free to leave a comment in the other video gaming stream if you want to see some more stuff like that. I like to make the kid happy because, I'm not around enough. So anything I can do should be done. I love you guys for watching. I will have some more videos like this coming for you soon, talking about the AMRA. I plan on joining, but I think I plan on joining the AMRA because we sort of need to stick together on a lot of this stuff. If we don't start sticking together, more stuff is going to be shut down and closed. At the same time, I am not the kind of person that likes to just go ahead and join a group that only cares about its agenda. I'm hesitant to join a mining group or organization and attach myself to it that doesn't care about polluting at all, that doesn't care about endangered species at all. Now, at the same time, I am all for proper regulation. I am not for over-regulation, and there is a lot of faulty regulation going on in the country right now. But I believe in case-by-case scenarios also. So case-by-case scenarios makes everything a pain in the ass, doesn't it? I love you for watching. I'll see you in the dirt. Frick, someday.